The West African country's military junta has tightened their grip on foreign companies that are mining gold.
Two of Mali's biggest gold mines went from foreign hands overnight. No press conference, no payouts, just silence and a signature. What's behind this sudden takeover? Why now? And is Mali about to flip the entire gold game? Let's find out. On June 30th, 2025, the government of Mali made a decisive, unannounced move that stunned international investors and shook the mining world. It officially took over two of the country's largest gold assets, the Yatela and Morila mines. These were not inactive or depleted relics. They were rich, deep, and still full of potential. But they had one thing in common. They'd been abandoned by foreign companies who once controlled Mali's gold wealth like lords over a fiefdom. The takeover was not theatrical. There were no public auctions, no transition meetings, no ceremonial handovers. Instead, the announcement came through a short government bulletin, issued just before the weekend, timed perfectly to avoid immediate backlash from international media cycles. But the message was crystal clear. Mali now owns what it was once only allowed to manage. The first site, the Yutella mine, sits in Mali's Western Cays region, known as the gateway to the nation's gold belt. It had once been jointly operated by Anglo Gold Ashanti of South Africa and Canada's IAMGOLD, under the Sadiola Exploration Company. But the companies pulled out in 2016, citing market pressures, even as internal reports suggested significant gold reserves were still buried beneath. Yatela became a ghost mine, silent but valuable. The second site, the Merilla mine in the Sikasso region, has a more recent and controversial history. Originally co-owned by global mining titans Barrick Gold and Anglo Gold Ashanti, the site was sold to Firefinch, an Australian company that promised a revival. Instead, Firefinch abandoned the project in 2022, citing structural challenges and risk. They left behind broken equipment, unresolved worker claims, and thousands of ounces of gold still underground. The departure was quiet, but it raised eyebrows across West Africa. Now both sites are officially state-owned. This isn't just a legal adjustment, it's a geopolitical shockwave. For the first time since the liberalization of Mali's mining code in the 1990s, foreign ownership of major gold mines is collapsing in real time. And unlike in the past, there's no plan to re-tender these sites to other international bidders. Mali is signaling a shift from open for business to "this gold is ours." What makes this move even more dramatic is that it follows closely on the heels of another recent escalation. The government's move to place Barrick's Loulo Gounkoto gold complex under state control, an operation that was, until recently, Mali's most profitable and globally visible mining site. The Loulo action drew outrage from Barrick, who publicly disputed tax claims and hinted at arbitration. But Mali didn't blink. This sequence of moves, first Loulo, then Yatela and Morila, suggests a pattern of aggressive nationalization, one that's not over. Analysts expect more seizures ahead, especially targeting mines with lingering disputes, unpaid royalties, or suspicious ownership histories. The silence surrounding the takeovers is also deliberate. No details have been shared about transitional plans, legal compensation, or investor arbitration. This is not a negotiation, it's a sovereign act. A declaration that Mali no longer views its gold as a shared enterprise between state and multinational, but as a strategic asset under full national command. The government has stated only that the reclaimed sites will be repurposed under a new national resource development strategy, with an emphasis on domestic refining, local employment, and sovereign pricing of output. Foreign companies have so far remained cautious in their responses, likely weighing legal retaliation against the risk of worsening diplomatic fallout. So far, there are no foreign troops, no corporate lawyers flying in, and no threats of sanctions. Just a strange, uneasy quiet. But beneath that silence, the tremors are spreading. And the bigger question now arises, what forced Mali to go this far? Let's pause for a second to say a big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. Mali didn't just wake up one morning and decide to seize gold mines. The state's bold takeover is not a random act. It's the delayed response to decades of deep-rooted exploitation, broken promises, and a mining model designed to keep the country rich in resources but poor in power. To understand this moment, we need to understand the pattern that led here. For over 30 years, Mali's gold industry has operated under a legal and financial system designed by outsiders and maintained through dependency. After the country's mining code was liberalized in the 1990s under pressure from the World Bank and IMF, a gold rush began, not for Malians, but for foreign corporations. The promise was development, jobs, and tax revenue. The reality was far more complex. By 2020, Mali had become Africa's second-largest gold producer, yet it remained one of the poorest nations on the continent. The question haunted every serious economist in the region. How can a nation so rich in gold be so poor in everything else? The answer lies in the architecture of exploitation. Foreign companies, primarily from Canada, South Africa, and Australia, secured long-term contracts that gave them up to 80% control of gold output in many sites. In return, Mali received a small stream of royalties, sometimes as low as 3 to 6%. Worse, tax loopholes, offshore routing, and export undervaluation ensured that much of even that tiny share never reached the national budget. Malian civil society activists have long pointed out that while the mines continued to pump out billions in gold each year, local communities remained stuck with polluted water, deforested land, and broken infrastructure. There were countless reports of missing taxes, evaded environmental cleanups, and unexplained license transfers, all quietly facilitated through complex legal shields and third-party subsidiaries. But the betrayal wasn't just economic, it was political. In 2012 and again in 2020, Mali went through major political upheavals. Each time, the country was told by Western institutions and corporate backers that stability would return if it followed economic best practices. Translation: don't interfere with foreign contracts. Don't change the rules. Don't touch the mines. Meanwhile, insurgencies in the north and rising costs of governance left the state increasingly desperate for funding, but unable to access the wealth under its own feet. And every time the government raised concerns about taxes or renegotiation, it was met with thinly veiled threats. Pull out, cancel investments, freeze aid. It became clear to many inside the military and nationalist circles that the gold was never Mali's to control. It was Mali's to watch while others extracted. This is the environment that produced a shift in mindset. When the current transitional military leadership took power in 2020, they inherited not just a government, but a broken, externally dictated economy. Their popular legitimacy hinged on one thing: reclaiming what Mali had lost. And so the focus turned to gold. But this wasn't a hasty pivot. Since 2021, Mali had already begun reviewing mining contracts, scrutinizing revenue losses, and quietly gathering data on which companies had failed to meet obligations. The Yatela and Merilla mines, both abandoned with reserves still in the ground, became perfect examples. These weren't dead assets, they were symbols of abandonment, proof that foreign firms would rather leave than share. By 2023, state advisors were openly discussing resource sovereignty, and murmurs of nationalization began to surface. International actors dismissed the talk as populist noise. They were wrong. Now, with the mines under full national control, the country is testing a dangerous but powerful idea. What if Mali can survive without the very companies it once couldn't question? Of course, that leads to another question. Taking over is one thing, but can Mali run the mines, refine the gold, and truly benefit from this break in the cycle? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Mali has taken back the gold. Now it needs to refine its power. Seizing the mines may have stunned the industry, but it was only half the war. For years, Mali has been a top-tier producer of raw gold, but it's never been a player in the global gold market. Why? Because all that gold left the country unrefined. Malian gold was dug up by foreign firms, exported in raw form to Switzerland, South Africa, or Dubai, refined elsewhere, stamped with another nation's seal, and sold on global markets for 5 to 10 times the value Mali ever saw. The real profit was made after extraction, in the alchemy of branding, refining, and pricing, and Mali was kept out of that room. By the way, we have launched merch that honors the African leaders who are taking a stand for Africa. Check them out to show you also stand with loyal sons of Africa, no matter where you are. In early 2025, quietly and without much international coverage, Mali began construction of its first large-scale gold refinery. And it's not just any refinery. It's backed, engineered, and co-financed by Russia. This facility, located just outside Bamako, is designed to process up to 200 tons of gold per year, and critically, it aims to meet international certification standards, the benchmark required to sell gold directly into global exchanges without needing Western intermediaries. Why does this matter? Because this single project could break the chain of dependency that strangled Mali for decades. Instead of watching its gold vanish into the vaults of foreign refineries, Mali could now refine, certify, price, and export its bullion directly to state buyers, banks, or even other African nations. It's not just economic independence, it's financial sovereignty. But this refinery isn't just a piece of infrastructure. It's a symbolic rejection of the West's monopoly on value. Russia's involvement here is no accident. As Moscow faces financial sanctions and pushes for gold-backed trade with its partners, Mali's gold becomes geopolitically important. The refinery serves both parties. Mali gets capacity, Russia gets a foothold in Africa's most strategic mineral supply chain. The Western reaction? Quiet, but tense. No Western country has formally condemned the refinery project, but international mining analysts have flagged it as a concerning shift in regional trade dynamics. Translation: we're losing control, and they're right to worry. Because this refinery isn't just for Mali. Officials have hinted it may eventually serve regional partners, particularly Burkina Faso and Niger, two fellow junta-led nations that have also begun pushing foreign mining firms out. Imagine a gold block, 3 nations feeding one refinery, pooling resources, and setting joint export terms. The Pan-African Gold Corridor suddenly looks very real. There's even talk in policy circles of creating a West African bullion reserve system, an alternative to dollar holdings, where member states store value in refined gold instead of foreign debt. If that happens, this refinery could become the Fort Knox of a new African financial future. But all of this hinges on one thing: Mali's ability to manage and protect the refinery from sabotage, both economic and political. There are threats, equipment delays, possible cyber attacks, hidden clauses in trade agreements that may be used to block Mali's access to gold exchanges. Western investors might try to blacklist Malian gold under vague, ethical sourcing labels, one of the newer weapons in global finance wars. And then, of course, there's the internal risk. Will Mali manage the refinery transparently? Will corruption creep in? Can local engineers, technicians, and financial regulators be trained quickly enough to run a globally certified operation? The stakes are enormous. If the refinery works, Mali will not just be mining gold, it will be monetizing it on its terms, with its stamp. That stamp could mean everything. But that also invites confrontation. Because now that Mali is stepping out of the exporter box, global players who once controlled the game are watching nervously. And one of them, Barrick Gold, is already at the center of a rising storm. In early 2025, just months before the nationalization of the other mines, Mali's government forcibly asserted state control over the Loulo-Gounkoto gold complex, Barrick's crown jewel in West Africa. Situated near the border with Senegal, this complex wasn't struggling or abandoned. It was highly profitable, efficient, active, a cash machine for Barrick, which made Mali's move all the more explosive. Officially, the state cited long-standing tax disputes and breaches of national resource sovereignty. But beneath the legal language was a clearer motive: ending Mali's status as a junior partner in its most productive mine. Barrick's response was immediate and aggressive. The company filed official objections, denied all wrongdoing, and hinted at international arbitration under bilateral investment treaties. It issued statements warning other investors about Mali's unpredictable policy environment, clearly hoping to trigger economic pressure on the transitional government. But Mali didn't back down. Instead, it released internal audits allegedly showing that Barrick had underreported taxable profits for years. It accused the company of using offshore financial routes to minimize payments. In a rare move, it published details of royalty discrepancies, claiming the state had lost millions of dollars annually due to creative accounting. This wasn't just a dispute, it was a rupture in the old order, and it sent a signal. If Barrick can be challenged, no company is untouchable, and that's when the temperature began to rise. Within weeks of the Lulo move, high-level delegations from Canada and the US reportedly reached out to Malian officials. While no threats were made public, insiders say the message was clear. Mali's economic behavior is being watched. Sanctions, travel restrictions, and aid freezes were all back on the table. Western media began publishing a flood of articles warning that Mali was driving away investment, courting instability, or falling under Russian influence. And yet, Mali's leadership held the line. Why? Because politically, this isn't just about economics, it's about domestic legitimacy. The government knows that millions of Malians, especially in rural areas near the mines, have long viewed foreign mining firms as extractive overlords. By confronting Barrick and seizing underperforming or disputed sites, the state is building a new nationalist narrative, one in which Mali fights back, reclaims its wealth, and charts its destiny. But that comes with a cost. Foreign investors are already pulling back. At least 2 Canadian mid-tier exploration firms have suspended operations in the region. Western banks are reportedly tightening credit to Malian mining projects, even locally run ones. Meanwhile, Mali's access to major gold exchanges could be jeopardized if multilateral institutions decide to question the legitimacy of nationalized gold. And this is where the broader game begins. Because if global markets start treating Malian gold as tainted or non-compliant, it could isolate the country financially. That's likely why Russia's role becomes even more strategic. If Mali is locked out of London or Zurich, it may turn to Moscow, Beijing, or Istanbul for direct bilateral gold trades. A quiet but serious bifurcation of the gold market could emerge, one Western-controlled, one increasingly African and Eurasian. Barrick, of course, won't go quietly. Arbitration cases can drag on for years, but their real power lies in stalling other deals, deterring future investors, and freezing infrastructure partnerships. And if Western governments decide to treat Mali as a high-risk jurisdiction, even unrelated sectors like agriculture or telecoms could face pressure. But for Mali, this is a line worth crossing, because the bigger question is no longer whether the country can wrest control from foreign miners, it's whether it can hold on to it and build something lasting. The refinery is part of that answer. So is the fight with Barrick. But the final piece is still missing. Mali has gold. It's building capacity. But can it turn that gold into true economic independence, or will it fall into the old trap of resource nationalism without real transformation? The mines have been seized, the refinery is underway, the foreign giants are being pushed back. But now comes the hardest part, the part with no speech, no seizure, and no geopolitical alignment that can be solved alone. Can Mali make it work? Owning gold is not the same as mastering it. History is littered with nations that reclaim their resources only to fall into the same traps: mismanagement, corruption, infighting, or worse, selling them all over again under new flags. Mali stands at that crossroads right now. The government's actions have electrified nationalist sentiment. Across Bamako, in mining towns, and even among sections of the diaspora, there's growing pride. We're finally standing up. But pride does not build economies, and the road from symbolic ownership to true transformation is long, technical, and brutally unforgiving. For starters, Mali's state capacity remains fragile. The same government that now claims control of multi-million-dollar mining sites must also ensure rural electricity, pay civil servants, run schools, and deal with insurgencies in the north. The mining ministry, already underfunded and understaffed, is being asked to run complex operations once handled by multinational teams with decades of engineering experience. There's a technical vacuum, and it needs to be filled fast. Training a new generation of Malian geologists, metallurgists, and refinery managers is not something that happens overnight, nor is building robust institutions to ensure transparency, avoid embezzlement, and track revenues. Without these systems, gold becomes just another political weapon, handed out in contracts to allies, siphoned into offshore accounts, or used to silence critics rather than build the nation. And then there's the regional dimension. Mali is not acting in isolation. Its closest allies, Burkina Faso and Niger, are undergoing similar shifts. All three nations have broken with France. All three are rejecting traditional aid models, expelling Western military forces, and embracing resource nationalism. There's even talk of a new economic union, with gold, uranium, and agriculture forming the backbone of a shared future. If they coordinate, they could create a powerful new bloc, a gold corridor, an economic shield, and a political alternative to ECOWAS and IMF control. But coordination requires vision, discipline, and unity. Three things that West African politics have historically struggled to sustain. The bigger risk? That foreign actors fearing a permanent shift might actively undermine this experiment. Sabotage isn't always loud. It comes in delayed logistics, diplomatic isolation, and the slow tightening of economic levers. Mali could face blacklisting. Western firms might quietly pay rebel groups to destabilize mining zones. Sanctions could be framed as anti-corruption, but serve another purpose entirely. And yet, there is one thing Mali now has that it didn't before: leverage. For the first time in decades, the state controls not just the land, but the minerals. It can decide who gets access, at what price, and under what terms. If used wisely, that leverage could fund roads, schools, and hospitals. It could back a gold reserve financial system. It could provide real independence, not just symbolic resistance, but only if Mali resists the temptation to become what it just overthrew, a closed elite managing national wealth in secret. Only if it builds systems, not just slogans. That's the final test. Not whether Mali can take gold back, but whether it can take gold forward. Because if it fails, the cycle begins again. The corporations return. The mines are leased off. The refinery becomes a ghost building. And Mali goes back to watching its future leave the country one shipment at a time. But if it succeeds, then this isn't just a story about gold. It's the blueprint of how Africa breaks the resource curse and rewrites the rules of global power. Do you think this would be a major step towards success? Will more nations join? Let us know in the comments section. Is Africa on the road to change? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.